3 bone-chilling true Home Alone horror stories that haunt people forever. It was a dark and stormy night when the first horror story unfolded. A young woman, alone in her rural home, suddenly heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps creaking on the old wooden floorboards above her. She was sure she was alone. The house was supposed to be empty, her parents away for the weekend. But there it was again, a slow, deliberate scrape of a shoe against the floor, sending icy chills racing down her spine. Her heart thudded in her chest, echoing like an ominous drum. She felt the air grow thick, heavy with dread. As she stood frozen, the shadows in the room seemed to stretch toward her, each flicker from the candle casting eerie shapes on the wall. It was not just her imagination, something was up there, lurking. She grabbed a flashlight and began to ascend the staircase, each step a battle between her fear and curiosity. But the moment she reached the top, the sound stopped. Silence swallowed her whole, wrapping around her like a shroud. "Hello?" she called out, her voice barely above a whisper. No answer, just more silence. It was then she noticed the attic door slightly ajar, a thin line of light peeking through. The tension was unbearable. What lay behind that door? Heart racing, she pushed it open, revealing a dusty space cluttered with forgotten memories, a broken doll, yellowed newspapers, and the unmistakable smell of decay. And there, in the corner, was a child's toy, a music box, gently swaying as if someone had just tucked it back into place. One curious pull of the music box's key sent shivers down her spine as haunting notes filled the attic, each one drumming up memories of her childhood, the happiest times twisted into something foreboding. Just as she turned to leave, she caught a glimpse of movement from the corner of her eye. Her heart dropped. That's when she heard laughter, a child's laughter, echoing in the empty house. Chills crawled over her skin as she sprinted down the stairs, desperately wishing she hadn't been so curious. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As she bolted through the living room, the blistering cold air hit her. She could hear it now, a soft thud coming from the kitchen. Panic surged through her body. Lightning illuminated the windows, casting long shadows where none should exist. The hairs on her neck stood up as she tiptoed closer. There it was again, a bouncy ball rolling across the floor, stopping at her feet as if beckoning her to follow. No kid lived here anymore. She couldn't take it deep down, she knew she couldn't. And then, with a deafening crash, the kitchen door slammed shut. The sound resonated in her chest like a gunshot, forcing her to jump back. She pressed herself against the wall, breath hitching in her throat, eyes wide as she strained to listen. The sudden silence felt like a storm brewing. It wasn't just her imagination anymore, something or someone was inside watching. What now? Was she destined to unravel the horrifying truth of this house? Would she confront the evil lurking in the shadows? She was about to find out, ready to step into the dark embrace of a spine-chilling mystery. The moment stretched like a taut wire, her heart pounding louder than the storm outside. Every fiber of her being screamed for her to run, but her legs remained glued to the ground. The bouncy ball rolled to a stop, staring up at her, a silent, mocking invitation. No more hesitating, she had to decide. Taking a deep breath, she turned the knob on the kitchen door, and it creaked open with a groan that echoed in the silence. The air within was thick and stale, laced with something wrong, something malevolent. She stepped cautiously into the dimly lit kitchen, the shadows from the windows twisting ominously. The tension prickled at her skin. It was impossible to tell if the feeling was fear or dread. Suddenly, from the corner of her eye, something moved. Just a flicker, but it was enough. She spun around, flashlight beam sweeping across the room, pausing on the sink where a dish towel swayed. No breeze. No other explanation. Instinctively, she took a step back, and the floor creaked under her weight, snapping her back to reality. "Stop playing games," she shouted, the words spilling out of her lips with a shaky defiance. "I see you." It felt foolish, taunting whatever was hiding in the kitchen, yet it freed the tension tightening her chest. Silence. That horrible blanket of quiet cloaked her once again. But then, from behind the cupboard, came a dull thud, as if something heavy had been dropped. A chill spread through her veins, a primal instinct to flee washed over her. But what awaited outside was nothing but the raging storm. With a mix of fear and determination, she advanced toward the cupboard, her flashlight beam trembling as she flicked it toward the darkened space. "I'm not scared of you," she declared, her voice barely breaking the stillness. But inside, she fought the urge to run. As she reached the cupboard, a shadow flickered out of sight, and with a burst of adrenaline, she flung the door open. Empty. Just a few dusty pots and pans. It was no solace. Something was here, hiding, waiting. She turned tail, fighting the surge of panic rising inside her. Just as she did, she caught a glimpse of that damn music box again, now visible on the edge of the table, as if it had been placed there deliberately. How had it moved? What she didn't know was that her voice had echoed too. The stillness was shattered as a child's laughter tinkled, soft and disquieting, rising above the storm outside. It sent a rush of icy dread down her spine as she dashed to the front door, slamming it shut behind her, but there was no escape. She looked around the house, each window looked like eyes staring right back at her, full of menace. Panic surged through her, and she grasped her phone, only to realize no signal. She was utterly cut off. As if the house itself had tucked her away in a lonely, isolated bubble. "Please let me leave," she whispered, full of desperation. Then she turned back to the house, facing her fears. The laughter was now joined by a voice, softer yet sinister, whispering her name. It felt like a direct challenge. A rush of breath caught in her throat as she realized one terrible truth: whatever was in there was not letting her go. "Who are you?" she gasped, anxiety boiling into rage. "What do you want?" But the laughter grew stronger, echoing like a haunting chime, filling her with a piercing terror. She couldn't leave. Not without confronting it. Not until she knew. Taking one last, trembling breath, she stepped forward toward the darkness of the doorway. Would she confront the evil that had claimed her home? Or was she simply walking into a trap? The answer loomed just ahead. Those silvery whispers continued to beckon her deeper into the house. What awaited her among the shadows would determine whether she would be lost forever, or perhaps uncover the sinister history of her own very roots. The darkness thickened, wrapping itself around her like a suffocating blanket. Each step she took towards the kitchen felt heavier, as if the floor had grown more solid just to resist her progress. She gripped the flashlight tightly, the beam flickering as if it could sense the brewing malevolence in the air. "Show yourself," she called out, surprising herself with how strong her voice sounded. But the shadows only deepened in response, swallowing the sound and returning the atmosphere to its dreadful silence. A shiver danced down her spine. The laughter faded, drifting like dry leaves in the wind, but the whispering persisted, soft and insistent, curling around her name. It sent her heart racing erratically. What was it that wanted her? And why her? With a mind spinning in fear, she stepped into the kitchen, the swaying of the dish towels suddenly seeming more menacing than before. A sudden crash echoed from the living room, shattering the tense stillness. She jumped, nearly dropping the flashlight. 1,000 thoughts raced through her mind. It had to be the storm. Something had simply fallen, right? But deep down, she felt it, that wasn't mere chance. Driven by a mix of dread and morbid curiosity, she crept toward the living room. Her pulse quickened with every creaking step, the flashlight beam darting nervously. As she entered, the sight sent her reeling. The coffee table lay overturned, the cushions of the couch scattered like feathers, and there on the floor was the music box again, eerily opened. It played a haunting melody, a soft tune that lingered in the air like a ghostly echo. How? Words faltered as she felt the roots of terror burrowing deeper in her soul. Had someone or something seen her? She knelt, bracing herself against the table. Cold fear gnawed at her insides. In that moment, she noticed something glinting beneath the couch. With trembling fingers, she reached for it. It was a small, dusty photograph. She pulled it out, the image barely visible through the dust. As her flashlight illuminated it, her breath caught in her throat. It was a family portrait. Her family. The faces looked familiar but were twisted with a sadness she couldn't place. And behind them, in the dimmest corner of the picture, was a shadowy figure lurking, a dark silhouette standing just out of focus. It almost felt alive. Get out, whispered the voice again, now louder. The laughter erupted into a cacophony of screams, driving a spike of paralyzing fear deep into her heart. She dropped the photograph, feeling as if the house was swallowing her whole. The music box stopped, and the silence returned, heavier this time. Her mind raced, desperation igniting in her chest. This was not just a storm, these were the echoes of her family's hidden history, screaming for her attention. What had they done? What had they hidden? With renewed determination, she stood, fueled by a burst of adrenaline. She would find out. She would uncover the truth behind this disturbing legacy. As she began to search the room, a sudden noise behind her made her spin around. The door to the basement creaked open slowly, an unnatural invitation beckoning her forth. Don't go down there, the voice hissed softly, the warning sharp against the otherwise still air, but curiosity mingled dangerously with her fear, igniting a rebellious spark within her. Why shouldn't I? She shouted back defiantly, tears of rage pricking at the corners of her eyes. What are you hiding from me? The shadows lined the walls like an audience, waiting for her next move. And just like that, she took a step towards the basement stairs, a darkness deeper than the night inviting her into its embrace, daring her to uncover what lay beneath. With each step down, the air grew thicker, colder, and she could almost hear her family's past whispering through the darkness. Would she find the answers she sought, or would she stumble upon her worst nightmare? The descent beckoned. One way or another, she would uncover the horrors that lurked within. The basement door swung open with a low groan, the hinges protesting against the stillness. Her flashlight flickered yet again, but this time it was almost reassuring, its glow illuminating the first few steps of the staircase. Come closer, the voice whispered, soft and seductive, slithering through the air like smoke. She hesitated, the unease in her belly churning. Shadows danced at the bottom of the staircase, moving like fleeting memories just beyond reach. Taking a deep breath, she gripped the railing and descended, the wood creaking beneath her weight, a warning echoed in the dark. With her heart hammering, she stepped into the basement. The smell was damp and earthy, a scent that instantly turned her stomach. Her flashlight beam probed the corners, revealing old boxes and furniture draped in dusty sheets, remnants of lives once lived. A creeping sense of dread settled over her, thick like the darkness around her. As she moved further in, the whispers grew louder, filling her ears. They don't want you down here, you were never supposed to find out. Who are you? She called out, voice shaking but resolute. What do you want from me? Instead of an answer, the music box from the living room began to play again, the haunting melody echoing off the cold stone walls. It seemed drawn toward her, the sound growing sharper, more urgent. Panic gripped her as she darted toward it, finding it sitting on a dusty table in the corner, somehow more ominous than before. As she reached for it, she noticed strange symbols carved into the table's surface, symbols that glowed faintly under the beam of her flashlight. One symbol in particular caught her eye. It resembled the silhouette from the photograph, the shadowy figure lurking behind her family. What have you done? She whispered, trembling as a deep rumbling echoed around her. The air vibrated, thick with energy, as if the house itself was alive, watching her. Suddenly, a loud thud resonated from the back of the basement, forcing her to whip around. There, draped in shadow, stood the very figure from the photograph. It was tall and lanky, its features obscured in darkness, but its eyes glowed with a menacing light. "Get out!" it roared, the words rippling through her like ice. She felt her resolve crumble, replaced by a primal instinct to flee. But she couldn't, not without answers. "Who are you?" she shouted back. "Why are you doing this? Your blood, is tethered to this place." It screeched, a twisted smile revealing sharp, broken teeth. "You can't escape what you are." The walls began to pulse, flickering between shadows and light, and she realized the shadows were alive, writhing around her like restless souls. Panic surged through her veins, heart racing as she moved to run, but the figure stepped closer, blocking her path. "Stay, you need to know," it hissed, a strange calm washing over its terrifying demeanor. In that instant, she saw the truth in its eyes, a desperation, a hunger, a need to be heard. Forgotten stories echoed back to her, tales of anguish buried deep. She was tied to them, bound by blood and history, an unwilling participant in a tragedy spanning generations. "You're part of this. The legacy you sought to escape." The figure leaned forward, and for a fleeting moment, she felt a connection, a dark understanding of her family's broken past. Fighting against the wave of dread, she took a step forward. "Show me, please." The basement trembled, shadowy figures revealing themselves. A kaleidoscope of faces, both familiar and strange, emerged from the dark. Their eyes bore the weight of unspoken sins, each pleading with her to listen, to understand, and as realizations crashed into her, the music box chimed one last chilling note, sending a shiver through her spine. Before she could process what lay ahead, darkness engulfed her, pulling her further into the chaos of forgotten memories. She knew she had crossed a threshold, but what awaited her on the other side? Would the truth set her free, or would it bind her to the abyss of despair? With the weight of her family's legacy pressing down, she breathed in deeply, stepping further into the dark, desperate for an answer that might destroy her or save her forever. The darkness enveloped her, pressing against her skin like a heavy blanket. Faces hovered just at the edges of her vision, flickering in and out, their mouths moving but no sound escaping. They were trapped in a silence of their own, just like her. She gasped, her breath catching as a cold wind rushed through the basement, sweeping past her, leaving a trail of icy whispers. "Listen to us," a voice murmured from the shadows, echoing in tandem with the chilling melody. The figure remained close, its glowing eyes seeming to light the dark with haunting familiarity. "Every sacrifice, every pain, it's all your bloodline." She took another step, her heart racing, pounding in her temples, a frantic beat that drowned out everything else. It was like she was falling into a bottomless pit, a place where every horror her family had faced was laid bare. The silence of those trapped returned, their eyes were full of sorrow and rage, but mostly a desperate hope that she would understand. "Do you know why we linger?" the figure said, voice low, yet dripping with urgency. "Because you have a choice." "A choice?" she echoed, confusion bubbling up like panic in her chest. "What do I have to do?" With that question, the basement shuddered violently, the shadows swelling and receding like waves crashing upon a shore. In the center, a singular face emerged, older, with eyes that seemed to pierce into her very soul. Recognition washed over her, chilling her further. "Mother?" She barely breathed the word, but the apparition nodded slowly. "I lost you, I didn't know. Oh, my sweet girl," the voice wept, resonating with the weight of decades. "You need to finish what I started. The darkness clings to our blood, but you have the power to break it." Each word struck her with force, rocking her back on her heels. Questions swirled in her mind like dust in a storm. "But how can I? I don't even know what you did. Every secret buried away can be unearthed. You must confront the shadow that haunts our line. You are both the key and the curse." More figures swirled around her mother's apparition, each bearing the same frantic hope. She recognized the face of a younger brother she never met, and an aunt who had disappeared without a trace. Face what you feared. Only then can you release us. Only then can you overrule the darkness that has kept us chained. The music box's haunting melody shifted, growing heavier, more urgent, as though urging her to make a decision. Every past anguish surged back, memories of loss, pain, and unanswered questions. She felt herself choking on their despair, her chest tight, as she realized this wasn't just about her. It was about her family, all those echoes living dormant within her. I'm scared, she admitted, feeling tears prick at the corners of her eyes. Fear is a weapon, the figure rasped, edging closer still. It can bind you or propel you forward. Chisel your path in blood and resolve. In that moment, she felt an undeniable surge of determination. This wasn't the end, it was a beginning. The choice she had to make was hers alone, a lightning strike that could shape their fate. Show me. She cried, hands trembling but steady. Show me how to break the curse. The shadows hissed, swirling faster like a tempest around her. The basement walls shook, and for a fleeting second, the air was electric with anticipation, but just as she felt the shadows begin to recede, another loud thud clattered through the basement, echoing like a warning bell. Something was waking up, something that had been hidden for far too long. As the floor shook beneath her, a new terror dawned in her heart. What if unlocking the truth brought forth something worse? What if the curse of her family wasn't just a story but something more sinister? Standing on the precipice of fear and resolve, she held her breath, deep down knowing, whatever waited to be unleashed could either save her or destroy everything she loved. And before she could brace herself, the darkness surged forward, clawing its way into reality. What awaited her in that pitch-black abyss? Would she unearth the family's legacy, or unleash a terror that even she couldn't handle? The shadows writhed and danced chaotically, tendrils snaking toward her. She backed away, only to feel the cold wall pressing against her back. Panic surged, squeezing her chest as she fought to make sense of her surroundings. The once familiar basement had transformed into a swirling vortex of fear. Reveal yourself, she demanded, her voice trembling but loud enough to penetrate the silence. The shadows hesitated, an eerie stillness falling over the space. For a heartbeat, all she could hear was her own heartbeat, a relentless thud echoing in time with the faceless ancestors surrounding her. Then, amidst the darkness, a shape twisted into form, grotesque and large. It lurked, barely illuminated by the faint glow of her mother's spirit, twisted and jagged, like a monstrous reflection of her fears. You called for me, a voice rasped, and it sent cold fingers racing down her spine. What are you? She whispered, dread pooling in her stomach like lead. I am the darkness you cannot escape, it sneered, its voice slicing through the air. The truth your family buried, the screams they silenced. The shadows that feed off your bloodline. Suddenly, the figures around her began to wail, a chorus of mournful cries intertwining with her own rising fear. The sound was deafening, striking at her very core as their pain surged up like a tidal wave. She struggled to focus, pushing against the chaotic swell of despair. Stop! She shouted, clenching her fists. All of you. I can't help you if you drown me in sorrow. And just like that, the wailing quieted to a haunting murmur, as if her words had cut through the haze. Confront it, her mother's apparition urged gently. You have the power. Stand and fight. Don't let fear take control. A surge of defiance built in her chest, forcing the fear to recede slightly. What do you want? She challenged the encroaching darkness, glaring fiercely at the entity. Why are you so determined to destroy my family? From within the depths, a face formed twisted, yet somehow familiar. Visions flashed in her mind, memories she had never lived. A painful scene of betrayal, shadows consuming laughter, a lone child abandoned in the dark. I want to be free, it howled, its voice rising, matching her building defiance. Free from the blood that binds me here, free from your weakness. With that, it lunged, and for a moment, everything blurred. She couldn't breathe. The chilling darkness wrapped around her throat, choking her. Remember, a whisper echoed, her mother's voice cutting through the chaos. Only when you face the truth will you break the curse. With each second, desperation clawed at her to give in, to succumb to the darkness. She gasped, fighting against the waves of fear trying to swallow her whole. And then, she remembered the warmth of home, her mother's embrace, the love that had once filled the very walls of this place. Drawing strength from that love, she shouted, "You're not stronger than me. I won't let you take anything else from my family." The shadows recoiled, as if her words were daggers cutting through its form. "No. You will pay the price." It shrieked, shriveling away yet lurking, watching with rage-dripping eyes. A sense of unity surged within her. She turned, staring at the faces in the shadows, her ancestors, the faint hope sparking like a dying ember. "Tell me how," she cried to them, pushing forward. "I will confront the truth, but I need your voices." The apparition of her mother stepped closer, their connection electric, igniting hope in the hollow pit of her heart. "Channel your love. Use it to drive back the darkness. Focus on us, our legacy." With newfound resolve, she gathered every ounce of love she could summon, pouring it into her fists like a fiery shield against despair. "I choose love," she screamed, unleashing the warmth of her family history, an incandescent light shining bright against the void. As the light surged from her, the entity shrieked, the wavering darkness convulsing in agony. The barrier between her and the void felt fragile, but she held fast, refusing to let go. The basement erupted around her, and with each pulse of her heartbeat, her family's legacy vibrated through her. Their whispers of strength and courage drowned out the darkness, and its ferocity began to weaken. But just as it seemed she might break through, a shrill laugh echoed from deep in the abyss. "Foolish girl," it sneered, darkness swirling violently as its tendrils reached out again. Was she ready to face this hideous truth they all feared? She braced herself, heart pounding, knowing one more decision would change everything. Would the light be enough to save her family, or would it merely unleash the real horror that lay hidden in the depths? A crack distracted her, a snapping sound, like brittle bones breaking. It pulled her gaze from the swirling darkness back to her own trembling hands, glowing with energy fueled by love. She couldn't let it fracture her focus. Not now. The laughter echoed again, chilling her to the core, a derisive sound mingling with the wails of her ancestors. "Do you think love can save you?" the entity taunted, weaving closer. "You are but a flicker in the storm of despair." Her heart raced in sync with the pulsing light around her. This was no mere darkness, it fed off fear, anger, despair, and her ancestors' anguish. 1,000 emotions crashed against her, threatening to drown her yet again. They were powerful, but she had embraced their essence, the gold thread of legacy binding them. "Your power is as insubstantial as whispers," the creature hissed, looming near. "I've existed long before you ever felt warmth." With its last word, shadows lunged faster, reaching for her like a predator. "Not today." She screamed and thrust her glowing fists forward, feeling the warmth escape her and surge into the void. The light twisted and expanded, filling the basement with an almost blinding radiance. The creature howled, its form buckling under the intensity as if the very air around them ignited. "You defy me? You think this will work?" It lashed out, the tendrils biting into the light, but they wilted like leaves stripped from life in autumn. "I will not be afraid anymore." Each word felt like a hammer striking against the darkness, sparking more flames. "Stop hiding behind my family's suffering. You're nothing without us." Another wave of desperation washed over her. The ghosts of her family rallied behind her, their presence a shield against the chaos. "We are family," one voice shouted, and it resonated deep inside her, cracking the shell of fear that still held her. The shadows pulsated like a dark heart, thrumming with anger. It lurched forward again, but she was ready. You want me to break? You think I'm weak? She yelled, her voice rising, intertwining with their spirits. You're a parasite. I choose to break free. Light erupted, bathing the room with colors of dawn, reconciling years of pain in a brilliant crescendo. The darkness recoiled, its ghastly visage twisting in agony, threatening to swallow the light whole. Just as victory seemed near, a shuddering shockwave resonated through the ground. The basement trembled, dust shaking loose from centuries of memory, and an eerie whisper split through the echoing chaos. You cannot escape the truth, it slashed, a promise and a threat intertwined. All at once, the shadows writhed violently, then fell still, gasping for breath. She sensed a moment of stillness crackling with potential, like the quiet seconds before a storm. The shadows lingered on the periphery, dark and hungry, swirling in anticipation. Her mind teetered between victory and failure, caught in the ominous embrace of the unknown. Then a rumble, guttural and deep, reverberated from the depths of the darkness. You awaken what you do not understand, it rumbled, a bitter laugh creeping into its voice. Your family carries burdens. You wear them now. But believe me, the truth is far more horrifying. The ground trembled once again, and the shadows seemed to saturate the air. Panic coiled within her, tightening like a vice. What waited beyond this moment? Would uncovering the truth transform her into something she loathed, or would it grant her the strength she needed to break the chains of her bloodline? She felt the tug of destiny weaving tightly around her, sending a shiver down her spine. Was she ready? Would the choice to confront the horror within her family be her salvation or doom? With that question looming larger than the shadows themselves, she braced for the chilling next move, her heart racing from the doubt creeping in. What truths could the entity reveal, and how much danger lay in the path of discovery? The silence shattered, replaced by a rumbling laughter that skittered through the air like a swarm of angry hornets. You think you possess the light? The entity sneered, its voice twisting like the shadows that throbbed around her. You're tethered to the very darkness you fear. She forced herself to breathe. Her glowing fists, trembling with energy, strained against the oppressive weight of the shadows. I carry my family's legacy. She shouted, determined. You are not their end. You are just a barrier I will break. With renewed vigor, she concentrated on the warmth coursing through her veins, the love that whispered encouragement from generations past. Each heartbeat felt like a drum, rallying her courage as she summoned the spirits surrounding her. They were fragile threads in darkness, flickering but unbroken. The darkness seethed, curling around her limbs, thumping like a pulse that synchronized with her own heartbeat. You're nothing but a child. It roared, pulling back in a tempest of shadows, gathering its strength for another onslaught. And every truth has a price. What are you hiding? She demanded, rage amplifying her light. The basement erupted with a brilliant glow as the truth simmered just beneath the surface, waiting to be unleashed. She stepped forward, each movement pushing against the tide of shadows that writhed behind her. Show yourself. An unsettling quiet washed over the chamber as the shadows peeled back, revealing an apparition just beyond reach, a figure cloaked in obsidian, its face concealed. You are not ready for what you will find, it whispered, its tone chilling. The truth will claw at your soul. In that moment, doubt spread like a vine, creeping into her heart. What if this truth was like a mirror reflecting not just her struggles but the hidden horrors her ancestors had faced? Would unearthing it drag her down into a pit of despair? Then she remembered love was a shield made of resilience, and it held the stories of those before her. I have to try, she said, her voice fragile yet fierce. If I don't confront you now, I'll never be free. The shadows writhed, snapping back like a coiled serpent, shadows clawing for her light. Very well, it hissed, the figure shifting, emboldened by her resolve. But remember, every truth has its consequences. Suddenly, the darkness erupted. Thick tendrils whipped through the air, snaking around her arms, but she refused to give in. Her family's energy surged stronger. She felt their resolve weaving through hers, pushing her forward. As the light expanded and pulsed violently, a battle of despair clashing against hope. "I am never alone," she declared, her heart pounding with the force of hundreds of voices as she pushed against the encroaching darkness. "Together, we confront the truth." Light burst forth from her fingertips as she lit up the room like a blazing sun, the shadows screeching against the encompassing glow. In that split second, she glimpsed images, vivid fragments of the past flashing before her eyes, the pain, the fear, but also the love and defiance of those who fought and fell. "Stop!" the entity screeched, actual terror lacing its tone. "You are unearthing more than you can imagine." But she pressed on, determined to unearth the secrets. The air crackled. An image solidified within reach, her ancestor's face, twisted in agony yet resilient, mirrored in her own determination. In that heartbeat, she realized this revelation could be her greatest power. If she could conquer the truth, she could defy the darkness once and for all. The air thickened, rippling with anxious energy. Just as she reached for the memory, an explosive force jolted her backwards. Her vision blurred, the lights began to flicker, and the laughter returned, louder and more menacing. "Truth?" the entity jeered, a cruel smile shadowing the figure. "You have no idea what you are asking for." She realized too late that she might be crossing a line that would change everything. The basement around her warped, the walls shifting dangerously. Would she unravel a truth far worse than the darkness she faced? As the shadows closed in, she braced herself once more, heart pounding, ready to confront whatever came next. What would the truth reveal, and could she endure its weight, or would she shatter under its pressure? The answer hovered just beyond her grasp as the shadows lunged forward. The shadows lunged toward her, a tidal wave of darkness intent on drowning her glowing light. Fear clawed at her chest, but as she staggered back, she felt a surge from within, stronger than any moment before. Each heartbeat pulsed louder, like the steady thrum of a war drum, echoing the legacy of her ancestors. "Not today!" she shouted, summoning every ounce of strength. The light burst brighter, illuminating the entire basement, forcing the shadows to retreat for just a heartbeat. But the entity's laughter sliced through the air, an icy blade that sent shivers down her spine. "You think you can hold back the abyss?" it taunted, creeping closer as the barriers of light flickered. "You're unearthing a truth that will shatter your mind. What are you?" she cried, determination breaking through her fear. The weight of her family's sacrifice bore down on her, a reminder that this darkness was built on centuries of pain and fight. The entity paused, hesitating just long enough for her to muster more light, casting it like a shield between them. "I am the judge of your past," it hissed, its features twisting in the haze. "The blood you possess carries its burdens. Would you hang yourself on the weight of your lineage?" Suddenly, images from the past spun through her mind like a storm, her lineage riddled with secrets, sacrifices made in the shadows, and unspeakable horrors that left scars deeper than any physical wound. Each story flickered, pulling her closer to the truth, threatening to engulf her in despair. She gasped, swallowing that anguish. Every scar has a story. Every sacrifice holds power. The figure recoiled, almost as if her words had struck it. "You dare challenge the very essence of suffering?" It spat, shadows billowing around it, rising as if to collect themselves into a more monstrous form. "Yes," she shouted back, squaring her shoulders. "I will embrace the light of my ancestors. I will honor their fight." With that, she flared her hands, pouring everything into a brilliant pulse that rippled through the air, pushing against the darkness with all the force of her newfound resolve. Fragments of the truth danced before her, tantalizing and terrifying. Memories of her grandmother's final breath, her mother's whispered warnings, the bloodline's history thrumming alongside her own heart. These were not just stories, they were weapons against the encroaching shadows. "What are you truly afraid of?" she asked, her voice steady. "Your own existence. You thrive on our fear. But I will no longer succor your legacy." The shadows howled, the air vibrating with their anger. "You'll regret this recklessness." They shrieked, but she could see their resolve faltering. Each scream fed her light, every cry of pain twisted into strength, shaping her purpose. In that fierce moment of clarity, a doorway whispered in the dark the hidden truth of her lineage, an unguarded passage to powers untold. She could feel the cool breeze of otherworldly things waiting just beyond, the very answers she needed to break the shackles of her bloodline and defy the dark before her. "Step through, if you dare," the entity sneered, almost beckoning her with a sinister curl of its shadowy fingers. "You may find something darker than your nightmares." She hesitated, the air thick with dread. Could she cross that threshold? The truth beckoned, yet the weight of adherence to her family's legacy loomed larger. Just as she felt the pull of the truth, an icy grasp clamped around her ankle, dragging her back down into the depths of darkness that threatened to swallow her whole. Panic surged, clawing at her throat as she fought against the shadows, struggling to stay afloat, and then she caught sight of a glimmering light across the abyss, flickering like hope itself. Would she reach that light and unveil the terrifying truth, or would the shadows drag her into a void from which there was no escape? The next heartbeat trembled with uncertainty as she wavered on the brink. The shadows pressed closer, their icy tendrils wrapping around her legs, trying to pull her into the depths of despair. Her heart raced as she fought against the darkness, reminding herself of the warmth of her family's love. With a fierce cry, she willed her body forward, seeking that glimmer of hope. "I want to let you take me," she shouted, determination flooding her veins like fire. The light danced just out of reach, yet it called to her, promising freedom from the chains of sorrow binding her. Gritting her teeth, she pushed against the tendrils, feeling them snap at her skin like 1,000 biting insects. Every ounce of pain filled her with strength. "Enough!" she bellowed, feeling the power of her lineage pulse around her. The air shimmered with energy, igniting her spirit into a blazing flame. With one final push, she reached into the light, and everything changed. The basement exploded in a brilliance of pure energy that shattered the darkness. The shadows howled, their wails merging into a cacophony as they recoiled from the force of her will. She felt the entities surrounding her, the faces of her ancestors resize in their fear, terror overcoming them. "Feel the weight of your indecision," their voices cried, echoes of the past rising in a storm, but she stood firm. "I am my own story," she shouted, her voice echoing loudly through the tumult. "I break the cycle. You no longer have power over me." The entity, now a twisted form rippling with rage, lashed out, but she turned her gaze, focusing intently on the light, channeling all the love of her ancestors into one single beam. "Leave us. You are nothing to me." The moment was electric. The shadows recoiled, the dark visage shivering in panic. "You think you can escape? I am the darkness stitched into your very being. No. You are my past, but you don't define my future." In that heartbeat, the music box began to play once more, but this time, it harmonized with the bright glow radiating from her hands. The melody shifted, echoing through the space like a cleansing ritual. The otherworldly light gathered strength, pulling threads of history from her veins into one colossal wave that erupted forth, crashing like thunder against the darkness. The basement shook violently, and she felt the walls tremble, but she held fast. "Your truth holds no power here," she screamed, and the walls quaked. The darkness writhed, ripping asunder from the intensity of her words. The shadowy figure roared, the sound drowning in echoes as it disintegrated under the light, fading into wisps, finally released from the chains of her lineage. Suddenly, the basement grew quiet, the air still and thick with the remnants of energy. She felt the warmth of her ancestors surround her like a comforting blanket. A mixture of relief and exhaustion swept over her, leaving her breathless. Then, emerging from the containment of shadows, came their faces. Each ancestor's visage transformed from anguish to gratitude, their expressions soft, filled with love and understanding. "You did it, dear girl," her mother whispered, stepping toward her, glowing with a light of its own. "You faced the darkness and broke free." But she didn't stop there. She took a step forward, eyes glistening with leftover tears. "What do I do now?" she asked, vulnerability cracking through her brave exterior. "Now, you live," a chorus of voices answered, harmonizing in unison. "Create your story." As their light encircled her, she felt the pulse of history, the weight of generations lifting from her shoulders. No longer was she solely defined by pain or darkness. She could write the next chapters of her life, one full of hope and resilience. With a gentle smile still lingering, her mother's face began to fade, but the energy pulsing through the room remained steady. For each of her ancestors, their agony was transformed into a legacy of strength. "You carry our love, child. You carry our strength," they echoed together. As the shadows dispersed, light filled the basement once more, illuminating every corner, revealing the truth laid bare within those walls, the truth of trials and triumphs, of love and legacy. Exhaling deeply, with all the weight finally lifted from her chest, she turned toward the staircase that led out of that dark past, each step a promise of new beginnings awaiting her. No longer haunted by fear, the house felt different, alive with potential, drenched in memory but cleared by her newfound resolve. She stepped into the light streaming through the doorway, the promise of a bright dawn waiting just outside, full of life and adventure. Standing at the threshold, she paused for a moment, feeling the lingering presence of her family beside her, humbled by their whispers of encouragement. The weight of her choices ahead was hers to carry, but she knew now she did not walk alone. "Goodbye," she whispered, before stepping into the world, ready to embrace her future unshackled. "Now it's your turn." This is the moment to show your support. Subscribe immediately to ensure you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to fuel the algorithm, and flood the comments section with your thoughts and theories about this shocking conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this epic finish. True fans know the importance of supporting the channel. Let's make our voices known.